Hey guys, I'm here today to do a video entirely inspired by Kate over at the channel Kate How. I always find it weird saying over at the channel when it's the person's full name because it's not a channel, it's their full name, but you guys know what I mean. So I'm going to link that video down below and also up above. Basically what Kate does, and I had such a chuckle at this when I was watching this earlier today, she finds some of her favourite books, I assume on Goodreads, the books that she's rated 5 stars, and she reads out the 1-star reviews and sort of reacts to the people's reasoning for those 1-star reviews. And I thought that is such an amazing idea. I think it'll be so much fun, and I would love watching that on everyone's channel, so I feel like other people would equally enjoy watching it on mine. So that's what I'm going to do. So obviously I have no idea how many 1-star reviews I'll be able to find, and I'm not going to select 1-star reviews where they're like just the description of the book, because I don't like reading reviews where someone just spends, you know, a whole page telling you the plot of the book. Read the blurb first, then read the review. Anyway, that's a little mini rant before the other one starts. The first book I'm going to have a little look at, I'm trying to select books that I feel like it's, well, like there's some of my favourite books which I know loads of people also love, like Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I had a little flick and I couldn't find like a 1-star review within the first like 200. So yeah, so I'm choosing Nightwaking by Sarah Moss as the first book because I feel like it's not a book that everyone would love. So I reckon there probably is some 1-star reviews. So I'm going to tell you the average rating for each book. This has got 3.82 on Goodreads, so it's not overwhelmingly positive. So let me have a little look and find some 1-star reviews. Okay, here we go. I was highly irritated by the toddler's nickname of Moth, and vexed that it took the author until page 61 to inform me that it was short for Timothy. How did I not guess that? Pretentious. A 7-year-old reading engineering textbooks, highly pretentious and clearly heading for a nervous breakdown, as is his chronically sleep-deprived mother. For a woman with a PhD, she's incredibly stupid, as is her equally academic but idiotic husband. A book that needed tighter editing and a reality check. Yeah, I find that quite amusing, to be honest. I particularly find that amusing because I am precisely the sort of person who would name their child Timothy and then call them Moth for the rest of their life. So I guess I'm just very pretentious. Yeah, Timothy's a lovely name. Moth's an even better one, so why would you not go for Moth? You know, this is different because they're cats, not humans, but my cats are called Albus and Luna, which I usually call them by when I say it to you guys, but to them, and between Johnny and I, we never call them Albus and Luna, we call them Grey Guy and Toonie. I'm aware that Albus and Luna are nicer names, but no. Grey Guy and Toonie are also cool. So, also yeah, he does read engineering textbooks. I'm not sure that's a big plot point, but some kids are just really smart, and that is a fact. Like there are some children who just have a really high IQ, and he likes building blocks and stuff, so he's not like reading engineering textbook because he's planning to build, you know, the next Empire State Building. He just wants to, you know, be inspired when he's building blocks. Yeah, I don't think she's incredibly stupid. I think her husband's a bit of a knob, but yeah, she's not stupid. It doesn't need tighter editing. So yeah, disagree. Okay, so I'm pleasantly surprised I couldn't find another 1-star rating that had a review written with it. So well done, Sarah Moss. The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making by Catherine M. Valenti. This has 3.98. This is the first book in a children's series, but I feel like some people would hate this book because yeah, I'm sure we'll find out why when I read some 1-star reviews. There is an audience for this sort of thing among the sort of fully grown women who grew up reading George MacDonald, Frank Baum, James Barrie and all the other sentimental precious fiction of an earlier era. And perhaps some of today's 21st century girls will grow up to be part of that audience. Sorry fans, this is too derivative, I really struggle with that word, and too damn twee for me. And once more, I am pissed off at librarians and other reviewers who review for the child in themselves rather than for the child actually standing in front of them wanting their help in finding the right book. Very angry librarian there. So, I'm not a librarian. I don't know children that I recommend books to. I loved this book. I don't know if I loved it as a child. I possibly would. I tried to read the Alice in Wonderland books when I was a child and I found them a bit too absurd, so I don't know if I would have enjoyed this because I feel like it has that wacky element. However, I think it's okay. There's a lot of children's books out there, an awful lot, and I think it's okay for children's books like this to exist. And there's enough other stuff out there for children that don't want to read this sort of thing to enjoy. So yeah, I also find it slightly sad that the whole angry rant was aimed at girls and women and what they enjoy, because I'm sure men and boys could enjoy this book as well. Next one. I didn't properly finish the book because I couldn't bring myself to care about what happened to the main character, or rather, I feel like I already know. September is going to keep encountering a string of creatures, except creature is totally different from any other rendition of creature in literature, and will spend some time pedantically explaining itself and its neuroses. There'll be a lot of false wackiness, and she'll pick up clues and bits of string and solve whatever at the end, and click her heels and go home, and I'm so bored. It was overwhelmingly writerly, and while I appreciate a well-turned phrase as well as the next person, Valenti is jumping in front of me, waving her hands in my face. Look at me, I'm so clever. I have a thesaurus and an appreciation of Lewis Carroll, so that I can't even see the story. That's an excellent review. I actually love it, even though I also love the book. And it's hard because I really agree with that review. I agree that Caroline Valenti is very writerly. I guess she's a tad smug. She's very self-aware of how intelligent she is and how descriptive her writing is. But yeah, I still loved the first book in the Fairyland series. Now I agree, I read the next two and I did find them a little bit like chapter with a creature, but the first book for me was so beautiful that I didn't feel that way at all. But I think that's an excellent and hilarious review, so I'm okay with it. Okay, so I've chosen one that I know will have loads of bad reviews. This is Swampland by Karen Russell. Now this is one of my favourite books of all time, but yet I didn't give it 5 stars because I'm aware it has flaws, so I'm willing to take some of these criticisms on board. This has 3.22 on Goodreads, so it's a book that has a lot of people not liking it, so yeah, let's see why. Oh lord, what a ghastly waste of time and effort this is. If I'd read St Lucy's Home for Girls Raised by Wolves first, I might have given Swamplandia a miss entirely. To my sorrow, I got them both at the same time, largely misled as a result of rave reviewers that must have been astroturfed by the publishers. Don't let anyone tell you this is a YA novel. It dealt in profoundly adult themes, chief among which is, when your family is splintered by an unforeseeable tragedy, you are hosed no matter what you try. Although the main character Ava is one of those spunky yet realistic young sheroes in the tradition of Scout and Diva, she's doomed from the first page. Some of the language is quite lovely, but it's never applied to anything that deserves it. Everything in Ava's surroundings is nasty, shoddy, cheap, depressing. Worse than that though is the wholesome squandering of every bit of the reader's goodwill in expecting an actual, narrative. Every build-up is thoroughly wasted, especially the one that makes you think this tawdry collection of horrors will finally build into an original tale in that decidedly non-American genre, magical realism. Unfortunately for every snookered reader who matches the story's waste of promising themes by wasting time reading it, the climax of the story is a moth-eaten horror cliché of a type that always convinces me of the preposterous incompetence of any author lazy, clumsy and oblivious enough to resort to it. Is there any way we can convince Karen Russell not to follow up this miserable book, this miserable failure with another book until she learns what the hell one does behind a keyboard? So it's something I always find interesting in reviews of books like Swampland is when people have an issue with someone using beautiful descriptions to describe horrible things, and that is what Karen Russell does in a lot of her writing. She's incredibly descriptive, but she doesn't always use that beautiful way with words to tell you about, a beautiful tree with flowers. Sometimes she uses that to discuss, some decomposing rubbish or something horrible that you don't really want to be described in lots of detail. But she tempers that with beautifully realised characters, and I felt a really good narrative. Now I agree, there's a part in the final third of the book which should have been halved because it goes on a little bit too long, and even I, as someone who was loving the book, did have to think, push through this a little bit. An editor should have taken that out, I completely agree. But I think this book is beautiful and it keeps you questioning throughout as to what's real and what isn't. So yeah, yeah, this is one of those books that I can entirely see why people wouldn't like it, but I love it. I liked the author's previous short story collection well enough, but this was a major disappointment. The eccentricity that enlivened the short stories began to seem more like an annoying stylistic tick on prolonged exposure, and as other reviewers have pointed out, this whole novel seemed structurally flawed. The bifurcation into parallel narratives just didn't seem to work at all. I confess to having skimmed the final half to see if things would get better. They didn't. That said, I still think Karen Russell is a talented writer and look forward to her future efforts. I'll let them off then. Yeah, if you read one of her short stories you don't like it, definitely don't read Swamplandia. I would not recommend. I would recommend the book, but not if you don't like her short stories. The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters. Now I think this is the Sarah Waters book that has possibly the lowest rating. It's got around 3.50 on Goodreads. And I think that a lot of reason people give this a low rating, from the low ratings I've seen, is that they don't understand the ending. Because, I mean, I love the book throughout, but the ending makes you look back and realise quite how intelligently crafted the whole book was, and that there was loads of clues throughout, and that they weren't all red herrings. So if you don't get that ending, which, you know, arguably isn't the author's fault because it is there, then you're not going to enjoy it as much. Go read the last couple of sentences again, is what I'd recommend. So here's a review. I don't think I've ever read a book for which my opinion appears to differ so radically from published reviews. I find it difficult to find anything good to say about it, yet it was Man Booker's shortlist in 2009 and has rave reviews reprinted on the first 3 pages and back cover. In short, I found it dull. I only kept going because it was the set book for my book club. Cliched, unoriginal. The characters are two-dimensional stereotypes and arouse no sense of identification, empathy or affection in me. The situation seems so familiar somehow, from numerous old films and short stories. The narrative is stuffed with loose ends and red herrings that turn out to not even be as interesting as those renowned fish. It felt like a book that the author had started on page 1 with no idea where she was going and just made up as she went along. With no editing, no revising, no sense of planning or structure. Loads of planning and structure to go into those clues. Henry James did it all a century earlier and so much, much, much better in The Turn of a Screw. Then he goes on to talk about how great that is. But the basic setup is virtually identical except that the children are young adults. Why does she try to tell the same story again but so miserably, pathetically, poorly, and I'm not going to be able to say this word right, amateurishly? I kept slogging on until the end, fully expecting that some amazing twist in the tale would occur that would make sense of the pedestrian slush I'd struggled through. But no, no twist, nothing unexpected or spooky or surprising. You missed the ending. This probably does qualify as the worst novel I've ever read from start to finish. Please somebody explain why so many people enjoyed it. I frankly thought it was dreary garbage that didn't deserve publication. Oh, okay, I'm going to let this person off. They've responded and said, I'm commenting on my own review because I think I have changed my opinion of the book. Still think blah 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 blah. However, I think I found the key to the mystery. And then they go on to think that they have figured it out. And people are responding and the person's up their rating to 3 stars but still hasn't changed their rating. So yeah, I think it makes a massive difference. You know, I still love the book and even without that ending I'd still have loved it, but I think a lot of people would struggle if, you know, they don't get that ending. The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry. I don't really have much to say about this one. I was bored throughout. It took me several days to finish since I just couldn't get into this. I didn't like any of the characters. I thought the narrative style switching to letters made the flow even worse. The ending was just there and seemed set up for a sequel. No thank you. The book just flip-flops between characters. That also didn't help. We follow Cora, Martha, Will, Stella, Luke, etc. throughout the book. Maybe if Perry only had the book going back and forth between Cora and Will, it would have worked better. The writing was fine. I just didn't care to delve too deep into this one. I was bored. I found myself skimming certain pages just wanting to be done. There doesn't seem to be much of a lesson in this one, besides people running around and not being with the person that they want to be, and myths of serpents. If anything, this book just seemed to be love triangle after love triangle set in Victorian London. That's probably why I didn't like it much. Yeah, I mean, I just disagree. I think this book has so many layers to it, like she tackles so many themes, and I think lots of people's ones that review seem to be saying like there's just too much going on. And I loved this book. It could have probably been a bigger book and tackled some of those themes in more depth, but I still think it was excellent how it was, and I think there was way more to it than love triangles. And the majority of the book is based around friendship rather than sort of sexual relationships. So yeah, I disagree. Next one. Yeesh, where to start with this book? I saw it while I was in Britain for work. I liked the idea of reading a book set in Victorian England and picked it up after I got home. I finished reading it while on a flight to Hawaii. Normally I take books to read that I enjoy. I took this one to force myself to finish reading it. This is when I'm just like, DNF it, you know, like if you don't enjoy it. I'm going to skip this bit because it's them just describing the book. The book works very hard to paint Will and Cora as magnetically drawn to each other. In reality, they are both selfish jerks that don't care a whit for anyone else. that doesn't mean they're not magnetically drawn to one another. Like, those two things aren't, you know, independent of one another. Cora is the heroine of the novel in that the author has given her some feminist qualities. In these regards, feminist means that she often dresses, acts and thinks like a man. The book states this over and over. In those times, in order for a woman to be considered a feminist, which has at the time and still somewhat now was a dirty word, it wouldn't be that, so there was very strict delineations between what a woman would talk, dress like and appear like, and a man would. So the only way they could view someone like Cora was that she was not acting like a woman, and therefore she was inhabiting the man's role, right? That isn't a fault of Sarah Perry, that's a fault of the way women and men and just gender were viewed at the time. Anyway, that's the last one I'm going to do because I fear this video is very, very long. So let me know if you enjoyed this. I had real fun doing it. As I said, I was inspired to do this by Kate's video, so do go and watch that as well. And let me know if you enjoyed this and if you'd like to see me do more versions of it, or I could flip it and I could do books that I gave 1 star and other people gave 5 stars, maybe. So yeah, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.